guys. どうもこんにちは、こんばんは、ローリンです。I'm Ron, and today we're gonna go through the process of me knitting a Snoopy ski mask and talk about some stuff that I have learned in school recently. So if you would like to knit along with me, please join me and listen to me yap. Otherwise, please enjoy watching me knit the ski mask. I'm hoping to make this video about 18 minutes long, hopefully, but I have a lot of recordings to get through, but I don't want to bore you guys out. I mean, personally, I really like long video essays, but I don't know, man. I don't trust y'all not to be iPad kids with short attention spans. So while I am organizing some of my yarn and tools and showing off some of my practice squares, I would like to tell you that today I'm going to talk about socialist feminism. This topic was introduced to me in Russian history class, and it interested me, so I would like to talk about it today. Okay, but first let me show you what I will be using to make this ski mask. Here I have white yarn. I will be using this the most. It's unfortunately acrylic. I'm just a weak college student, guys, okay? But I would like to use wool or something nicer, but that's what we have. And I have the same yarn, but in black. And here you can see me installing Fire Alpaca, which I had to reinstall because I had to reset my laptop this week. It's a great software to draw, and I am going to make a drawing of what I want to make first so that I know exactly what I'm gonna start off with. And while you're watching me drawing, let me clarify what socialism is. So I'm just gonna read it off of Wikipedia. Socialism is an economic and political philosophy encompassing diverse economic and social systems characterized by social ownerships of means of production as opposed to private ownership. It describes the economic, political, and social theories and movements associated with the implementations of such systems. I think I added some S's unnecessarily, but ignore that. Oh, and guys, please don't get the impression from this video that I'm promoting anything. I'm just a student, guys. I'm just learning how, and I like making videos. Don't threaten me with guns and freedom, please. So anyway, while I cast on 40 stitches, let me tell you guys how I got the idea for this video. I got the idea for this video because I was reading The Woman Worker by Nadezhda Krupskaya, and I thought what she wrote was very interesting. She basically tells the story of how women and people in general lived before the Soviet Union, and then she writes about the importance of women being part of a socialist revolution. She also writes about the change that needs to be done to give women better lives. What I'm trying to say is that most of what I will be telling you guys about here are based on what I read from her, but I also read a bit of The Love of Workeries, which is basically a book about this woman who lives through the transition from the Russian Empire to the Soviet Russia. And I read a bit more in articles about women in the Soviet era. So I definitely have more than one source. Okay, wait. Let me tell you guys something here though. I was knitting my 40 rows for a solid 30 minutes or something, and I realized I flipped my work and I didn't realize. So it looks wonky. So you can see my disappointment here. Disappointment, whatever. Nevertheless, I just restarted. From everything that I read, I want to make it clear to you guys that I think Krupskaya had a pretty polarized view, or at least that's the impression that I got from her writing. She really describes the most terrible things that were happening before the revolution, and from what I read, there were definitely people that lived way better than what she describes. But of course those people were the minority, and most people were definitely struggling in the empire too. I just wanted to put it into perspective that what she wrote didn't apply to everyone, especially people in urban areas. So anyway, I'm gonna talk off of a script now, so I might sound weird, sorry. Nadezhda Krupskaya, Vladimir Lenin's wife, I don't know about the pronunciation, guys, I'm sorry, wrote a booklet about women and socialism called The Woman Worker, and 1889 while she was in exile.
She later officially published it in 1925. In the booklet which she illegally published in her younger years, obviously, she describes the struggles of the working woman in the Russian Empire and the prospects of the working woman in a socialist society. So, in her introduction, written in 1925, she clarifies that when one compares the description of the then condition of the worker woman with today, one sees how far we have moved forward. But one also sees the other side, that much remains not yet done, and how doggedly must work further to achieve the full emancipation of the woman worker.
One of the most important things to understand is that the major issue was that many of the working class women in the Russian Empire prior to 1917 had very little flexibility or freedom in life. So women were paid less and were offered fewer options to life than to find supplemental ways to earn an income in order to sustain their lives. So women were left to be either dependent on men and their families or to prostitute themselves. And women were often married off to a man who they did not know, and they lived basically miserably. Like, domestic violence was the norm and women were used as property. If a man was in debt, his daughter would not be allowed to marry. Like, wives would be left in pawn shops in order to get around getting enough money. People commonly use the phrase pawning wives. Due to desperation and low wages, women often began working as young as 5 to 8 years old, with many turning to prostitution to survive. She says, quote, "The woman's pay is so low that one cannot survive on it, so the woman's wage only serves as a supplement to the family income. And if the woman happens to live alone, then poverty forces her to sell not only her labor power, but also herself." There were many types of employment for women, such as cottage work, being a maid, field work on their husband's property, and factory work. Krupskaya focused on factory work because she believed that factory work could lead women to liberation and involvement in socialist activism. Along with the recent push by the citizens of Georgia, as we have been seeing on TikTok and whatnot, to join the European Union, we have been seeing a pattern of a desire by East Europe to westernize for the privileges of being part of the West. I just want to put it in perspective for you guys for a second. Imagine you're not allowed to marry someone because your dad can't get his stuff together and he's in debt. Well, it wasn't that simple, but imagine that. Like, just think about how much you hate your 4-hour part-time job at McDonald's, and think about how it must have been for these ladies working 16-hour days, pregnant. And then you don't even make a living wage. You have to suck up to some dude one way or the other to even survive. And then you have your baby, but you don't even have time during the day to even spend time with them, take care of them. Anyways. So you can see that trend in Eastern Europe as you learn about recent Russian history. So, like, there's this story about royals in the Russian Empire building, like, basically whole paper cut cities that were perfect to impress Western visitors. Peter the Great literally built Petersburg because he wanted Russia to be more like Europe. Like, it was in Finland, like entirely like Western style. There's another example, the Orange Revolution. The Orange Revolution was a revolution by the Ukrainian youth back in, I think, the early 2000s, I believe. because they wanted to become part of Europe for all of the economic prospects and privileges it resembles. So this was the same case with the women in Russia. In Krupsky's booklet, she outlines the solutions for what women's rights should look like in an improved and possibly socialist society. Not only does she take inspiration from a Congress meeting in Sweden, but she expresses the need to follow in the footsteps of the West in order to improve the conditions of working women. Firstly, one of the most important points in her list of solutions is that the solutions are not only written on paper but enforced. Then she lists improved laws in terms of working conditions. Previously, laws surrounding working women were virtually non existent in the Russian Empire. As she says, the law does not specify a limit on the length of the working day for women. According to our factory legislation, there is only one decree concerning women's labor, and that prohibits night work in the textile industry. She expresses a desire for safer and cleaner working environments and protection of pregnant women. Oh, actually, guys, let's have a little break from talking about socialism because I actually ran out of yarn here. I'll show you. So this is what I have so far, and I need to make a whole hat section, and this is what I have left. Just one roll of black and white yarn was not enough, and I was so close to actually like finishing the head part, but yeah, this is what happened. And guys, look, I was desperate over here, okay? I was so close to just using some random other white yarn to stitch up the rest of it. There was literally only like an inch left to the top of the head when I like finished using up all the yarn that I had. But no, the only other white yarn I had was a completely different weight, and it was not acrylic, it was cotton, so it would have just not worked out at all.
It is your boy.
Well, anyway, as you can see, I I finished my little pieces of yarn that I have left while I was watching some YouTube videos, and you can see all the progress come into shape. And thankfully, I have an amazing friend that took me to the store to get more yarn. But before I show you guys that clip, I just want to show you this little binary counting system that I built over here. It's so cool. I showed off my yarn. What else should I do? A thirster. No. Here's the view, guys. It's shit. It's shit. I don't think so. The sky is beautiful. This is gonna be my first video. Yeah. This is our first impression of the people.
We're so fucking lame.
And now I'll just be showing you the beautiful view of the sky and get back into knitting. So let's keep talking about socialist feminism. So one of the ways that Krupskaya looked to Europe at the time is that she proposed the concept of kindergartens and community child rearing as part of their vision for societal reform. This was inspired by Germany. While women were forced to work long hours, they were also expected to do housework and child rearing. So, to change the inequality in this distribution of work, she proposed that young children would be sent to kindergarten. Then she expressed the need to send children to school after kindergarten. I think one of the most interesting and shocking things I learned from her writing is how working class children grew up in the Russian Empire. As I told you guys before, people had to start working at around 5 to 8 years old, when children are supposed to be starting to go into school. But you might ask, what happened with the children younger than that? Well, the answer is that they basically were sustained by elderly women. And I say sustained because these elderly women were forced to take care of multiple children, and obviously, she would not have enough manpower to take care of so many children. So, toddlers basically just did whatever, other than being fed and have a roof over their head. Krupska describes that most of them just learned unhealthy ways to socialize, such as starting fights, and just grew up in nature. She also talks about how the situation was so dire with these working class women that there were institutions disguised as hospitals that had these quote unquote angel nurses that would slowly kill the babies. Because the women were so poor and couldn't afford the time or the money to have a child, they would slowly poison the children. So far from what we have talked about with the proposals by Krupskaya, it's one, enforcement of laws protecting women's rights, two, protection of pregnant women's working rights, and three, kindergartens. I finally want to highlight that she wrote, Congress demands that there be equal pay for women and men doing the same work, and describes how this all would not be possible without the participation of women in activism. And we can see how this actually worked in the book of Love of Worker Bees by Alexandra Kolontai. I think
Why
that's
didn't
how
I double
you
check
pronounce
that?
it. Fuck. In the book, the main character is a fabric worker who eventually gets involved in socialist activism in Russia. In the story, she grapples with the struggles of being a woman, but ideologically, she's strong minded at the same time. Her romantic involvement leads to estrangement because the character's involvement with politics and social issues. But the book highlights the importance of her work, basically, showing how the main character was able to become influential and persuade many women in her work environment with socialist movements. And later, she experiences the change in society from the Russian Empire to the Soviet Russia. The conflict between being a human and also being driven by ideology is reminiscent of the novel Cement, which I will not be talking about today, but both of the books highlight the importance of women's role in the political and social movements. After 1917, the push for equality in the post-revolutionary Russia took place. This was not only specified in gender, but also in every other category, such as race. This is described by Eka Tarbaidze in her article, The Status of Women in the Soviet Union, written in 2023. The revolution of 1917 removed all the legal restrictions that had kept women at a low rung on the status ladder. Article 22 of the Soviet Constitution of 1918 proclaimed equal rights for all citizens of the Soviet Republic, irrespective of gender, race, or nationality. And Article 64 established the rights of women to elect and be elected on equal terms with men. In 1920, abortion was legalized. It was not much later that women began to play a major role in the economy of Soviet Russia. In the essay Women in the Soviet Union by Mary Buckley, written in 1978, it is found that by the mid 1900s, women took over the majority of the workforce. 51% of the labor force were women in the year that the article was written. She says, however, this high participation rate of women in the economy has not come about from the ideological commitment to equality alone. So, not only did the women work more because of the newly enforced laws, because not only were there a bigger population of women in the millions because of wars and imprisonment, many of the laws that promoted equality were overturned, and propaganda by Stalin promoted this ideology of a traditional woman. Guys, I am not gonna lie to you. He started doing really crazy stuff like taxing women that didn't have children. Like they overturned abortion, obviously. But let me just make it clear to you guys. Krupskaya was Lenin's wife. Lenin was a revolutionary who ruled Russia from 1917 to 1924. That's when he died. Stalin was in power since 1922, but he completely defeated his political opponents by 1928. This is a quote from Tarbais. Under Stalin, women's status was not quite the same as described in Bolshevik statements and pamphlets. The Bolsheviks were the party that ruled Soviet Russia. Despite passing new laws, women continued to be treated unequally. So despite the ideologies of how to achieve equality, economic, social, and technical challenges led to women doing too much work to be able to have children. When situations became more reminiscent of pre-1970 times in the later Soviet Union, with women being forced to work and take care of households at the same time, the birth rate dropped. Not only were women needed in the labor force, but many had to work since they were the only parent in an estimated 1 in 7 households. And well, I would love to keep talking about socialist feminism, guys, but I wrote this script with absolutely no idea how it's gonna fit in the video, so I'm running out of time. Some of the last notes that I want you guys to take away is basically that what I think Krupskaya tells us is that women who believed in socialist feminism were people who just wanted to not have to struggle every day of their lives, and as a result she believed that socialism would help them achieve that. But in the end of the day, we know from history that unfortunately it did not work out exactly as planned. While they did actually achieve some cool things like widespread literacy and improved universal health care, it's definitely important to keep discussing what the factors were that played into the outcome of the collapse of the Soviet Union. There were definitely many outside influences too. It wasn't just Russia. Anyway, long live Boris Nemtsov. Now I'm just gonna talk about the ears on my Snoopy ski mask. Look at all these pins. Oh my goodness, guys. I can't tell you how much effort I put into trying to straighten out these ears, and they kept curling. So anyway, we're just gonna ignore that. This is my Snoopy ski mask, guys. Look, he's so cute. I spent 2 motherfucking hours waiting for that bitch to fucking dry, and it didn't fucking work. I'm sorry, I'm just being dramatic, y'all. The person I gave it to loved it, and it's cute. At the end of the day, it works. It's nice and warm. Yay! So, thanks for watching.